All right, what color do I want to paint these belts? Hey friends, if you're anything like me, you probably have way more mini paints than you could possibly use in a lifetime. Or maybe you're new to painting and you want to know which ones you should buy. Or maybe you're just looking for that secret color that the pro painter used to make that amazing work of art.
Because it couldn't possibly have been his years of experience.
Over the years, I've kind of created my go-to list of paints, and that list has continued to grow to the point now where we've hit an even 50 paints. I always look for new paints to try and new colors to add to the collection, but I thought it's best to share where we're at right now with my go-to list of paints. Before I get right into it, I want to clarify what the criteria are for making this list of must-haves. First and foremost, does the paint have a strong, rich, opaque pigmentation in it? And can it also be thinned down and not break down or separate? Number two, does the color have a wide range of uses so it can make its way into many projects to do many different things? Or does it do something so very, very well that I can't live without it for that use? And number three, is it either a very strong staple color or is it a certain combination of pigments that make this color that I find myself drawn to and wanting to continue to see that color in my projects? Right off the bat, you'll notice that I tend to enjoy dark, rich colors, more than bright maybe. And it's not just because I'm some dark, brooding emo painter.
I mean, I kinda am, but...
I just find that having rich, interesting dark colors offers me more flexibility. Coal black and midnight blue are some of the strongest colors for this kind of style. But I don't only just use dark colors. Obviously having a true blue is great, and Kimera, for their primary colors and secondary colors, are amazing across the board. Everybody needs a good turquoise, and Nocturna's new N paint line has a spirit blue. We're gonna use this later in this video, but I really like this for a turquoise. I didn't want to just be talking about paints for this entire video today, so I wanted to actually show some. And when Chris from Broken Anvil Miniatures showed me this lich, I knew exactly what I was gonna paint today. This 42mm resin model, like all of their undead, has incredible detail and is the cleanest cast I've ever seen right out of the package. Chris has shared with me some of their upcoming sculpts and designs, and every single one of their models has a unique and focused artistic style that all feel like they exist in the same world. I'm sure I'm not the only one who gets sick of seeing the same uninspired, bland minis. Be sure to check out the link and bookmark it because you are going to want to check out the crazy models that they are going to continue to be releasing over the next months and years. A big thank you to Broken Anvil Miniatures for supporting the channel. You know, when I was putting together all these paints on the table, I knew what would make the list, but I never really quite looked at them all together before. And I learned something about my painting style. You see, there was a buttload of warm colors, especially these browns. And it shows to me that I just prefer, at least at this point in my painting journey, to paint with a lot of warm colors, especially warm browns. That's why I love some really dark, rich, warm browns like Armour Brown, the standby go-to for shadows. I use it in almost every single miniature. Mahogany by Pro Acryl is even a deeper, richer brownish red, and it's probably my new favorite color in the last year of painting. One of the main reasons why I look for paints with thick, opaque pigments is that I tend to start the main sections of my models by wet blending the base coats. It saves me a lot of time in establishing my initial colors, really understanding what my scheme is going to look like, and I really get a strong foundation every time I start a model. In order to wet blend, I set down 2 thick separate paints next to each other on the model. I then quickly clean my brush, and while the paints are still wet, I do a swishing motion back and forth from one color, pushing it into the other, and then while still swishing, I pull the color back into the original color, and this creates a natural blend. The more practice you have with this, the more you'll find ways that you can finesse and finagle the paint to do what you want it to do. But honestly, it's a great technique to start at any point in your miniature painting journey. If your first pass at the wet blend isn't great and smooth and there's some splotchiness, or you can tell there's not full coverage, that's fine. Just let it dry and go back and repeat the process again. You'll be building opacity over that initial coat, and that'll kind of be your base for you to build more intensity in colors on your second pass. And it's good practice. The more you try techniques like this, the better you'll get. I gotta admit, I use a lot of greens in my painting, and green really was the hardest group for me to make for this must-have list. But I was very confident in these 5 here. My favorite starting point when it comes to greens is often Gnarls Green. Gnarls Green is a little bit on the darker side,
just like me,
and it gives us a nice, strong, brilliant, vibrant green without being too kind of neon-y, not realistic. This new Poison Green is my new favorite, bright kind of neon green. Jade is a color that is just so beautiful. It's such a great mix that I end up using it often. Once we've established an interesting color scheme with our wet blending, we're going to start building up highlights. We can always go back and glaze in shadows later, but what I really like to do next is build my highlights by adding little bits of off-white to our Gun Corpse Brown and bring up the intensity to our brightest highlights. I only have 4 reds on my must-have list, and that's for good reason. These 4 reds do what they do so well that I often feel like I don't need any other reds. Today we're going to show you the extreme power of Kimera's The Red and how pure, vibrant red can really change a model. My other 3 reds, I have a beautiful burgundy in Sanguine Base. It's great, it says to the eye it's red without having that pure over-the-top red color. And next I have a good burnt red, which is actually just called burnt red. It's not quite a red-brown, it's just kind of a rich dark red. And then Khorne Red. Got a little bit of a blue, a little bit of a purple hue to it, but strong coverage and a really, really good red. Speaking of reds, we're gonna take this Sanguine Base and use that as kind of our inspiration for our cowl and gloves on our lich here. I'm gonna wet blend once again, so let's walk through it again and see how it works on a different shape and a different surface. You thought my red list was short? Well, my yellow is shorter. Yellow, often known as the most notorious and hard to paint colors. First of all is Everland Sunset. Now, Everland Sunset I used on my very first miniature, and I just kind of have some nostalgia attachment to it, and so I end up using it a lot. For those true yellows, it's all about Kimera paint. Kimera has such intense pigmentation and great opaque coverage that their warm red and cool red really are the only true yellows I turn to. When I got to the Necromancer's Evil Book of Spells, I did that same wet blending, and I realized after a couple of passes through it was a little bit brighter than I wanted it to be. I wanted the pages to really feel like old, worn, moldy parchment. And here's where you can go back through with a glaze of your darker color until you get the tone right where you want it. Really at the end here, I don't feel like I've got enough variation of colors in this book parchment, but it is what it is. For purples and pinks, honestly, I tend to mix my own pinks because I can just take my red, which is often on my palette, my white that's often on my palette, and I can kind of create the pink that I'm looking for. But not when I want a bubblegum pink. And that's why I've got my Squid Pink by Vallejo Game Color. On to metallics, and if you've seen my true metallics video, you'll know my love for Vallejo metal color. Aluminum is my go-to. I tend to use it almost all the time. They got a wide variety of silvers, but I end up mixing standard acrylic paints into aluminum to create what I want to, so I don't need others. I have not tried their gold or their copper, mostly because it's been sold out everywhere and I can't find it anywhere. When I do, I'll probably transition over to that. But I do very much love Scale Colors metallics and Pro Acryls metallics. Now, I do have a full video on how I paint true metallics, but I want to show something important here and why I like to work with opaque paint that can thin down well, and that's with feathering. Feathering is a technique where we can put our paint on the model, quickly clean our brush, and once again, do that swishy motion back and forth on the edge of our wet paint. We move into the paint, and while still swishing, we pull back and create a smooth, level blend. Now, I said one of the criteria is a color that I either use all the time because it's very versatile, or something that does a job really, really well. And when it comes to my oranges, they kind of go into the second of those two categories. When I need really bright, vibrant, kick you in the teeth orange, I turn to Troll Slayer Orange. It is actually fairly opaque and really vibrant, so I love that one. When I'm making non-metallic gold, Scrofulous Brown is just the perfect mid-tone for me for a warm non-metallic gold. And finally, there is a color that actually does one thing incredibly well, but it's such a brilliant color that I end up using it in so many other things, and that is Bloodstone. Today we are going to show how you do rust with just this one color, but it's such a rich, vibrant, beautiful orangish brown that you'll find many other uses for it. I know I do. finally, we're down to the good stuff. My two favorite categories I have kept for last, first of which being skin tones. I like to keep this as their own separate category, even though they could be colors that could be used for other things. One issue that I have with skin tones is almost every manufactured skin in a bottle is not realistic. They're either too red or too orange or too desaturated that doesn't look like a human. So what I like to do is mix in a little white, maybe a little black, maybe a little dark blue to make it start with a more subdued color and build up in vibrancy and highlights later. Vallejo's Red Beige is my favorite go-to starting color for many skin types. Bugman's Glow is also either a great starting point or a great shadow for many skin colors. And Sunny Skin Tone is a great way to bring life, vibrancy, and warmth into your skin by highlighting with it. And of course, I love painting dead things, so Rakarth Flesh will always be on my list of favorites. Feathering is one of my favorite painting skills to use, and it's so satisfying to do. If you're feeling like you have some hobby burnout going on and not a lot of motivation to continue painting, find something to feather and you'll feel really good because it's instant gratification. Let's do it vibrantly with this Kimera Red. And now to my final category, which is whites and blacks. Straightforward, there's just one black, Vallejo Model Color Black. It's slightly satin, not too glossy to where it kind of stands out as being odd, not too matte to where it looks like charcoal gray. It's just the black I end up using, and I'm fine with that. On to the whites. There are 7 whites here, and you're going to immediately see, John,
most of those are not white.
And you're correct, technically. But I want to give you a little hint. If you start thinking of colors like these as whites, you will increase the quality of your paint jobs, because instead of highlighting with white, we can highlight with a light blue or light green or light yellow, and you can create much more interesting highlights without adding a vibrant amount of new color into your base tone. I strongly recommend you build out your painting repertoire with something like an ice yellow from Vallejo, something like a frostbite from P3, and this beautiful bright warm gray by Pro Acryl. Find colors like this that also have good coverage. That's key. White is notoriously chalky, and if you find off-whites that have great coverage, add them to your arsenal. I decided I wanted to add a secondary pop of color into the model. I find that lately I've been painting more subdued models, trying to be more realistic in their base colors, and then adding 1 or 2 pops of vibrant color to really draw the eye to the model. And so let's do that with this kind of arcane, nefarious energy that is flowing up from these sweet cloak curls. And there you have it, my list of must-have paints. Now, I know it's not an exhaustive list, but to me, I really do believe in every paint I shared today. But we should never stop learning. Anytime that we stop and think we know it all, we have simply given up. So, if you have a paint that you can't live without and I didn't name it here, put it down in the comments and tell me about it. Sharing what we've learned can only help others grow and will come back upon us as good karma. Anytime we can help a fellow painter slay the gray, it's a good day. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, You know what to do. We'll see you next time.